Hi, welcome to the final lecture of Focus on Personal Finance. Today we'll be covering Chapter 14, which is starting early with retirement and estate planning. Now I know last week we talked some about retirement savings, but we're going to build on some of those conversations today. The same principle for all of your other investments apply here. The small, regular contributions to your retirement account when made early on and continuously can add up to make a huge difference in the quality of your life at retirement. Though your Social Security income, if you qualify for it, and it's still available, will help you in your retirement years, it was never meant to be your only source of retirement income. So as you make financial goals, setting aside income throughout all of your earning years is highly recommended if you want to retire with adequate financial resources and security for your later years. So in this chapter, we'll take a look at the importance of retirement planning. We'll show how you can analyze your current assets and liabilities to make sure they are suitable for your retirement plans. Then we're going to estimate your needs by considering changes in spending patterns during your retirement years. Once your expenses are estimated, we then turn to the importance of evaluating your planned retirement income. Stress the importance of creating a balanced retirement budget, and then finally we're going to look at the importance of estate planning. Estate planning's goal is to assure that your estate assets go to the rightful heirs and don't end up going to Uncle Sam, which is not what any of us want. Finally, we're going to discuss the legal aspects of estate planning. We're going to offer tips about writing a will and selecting an executor. Next, we'll differentiate among credit shelter trust, disclaimer trust, living trust, and testamentary trust. We'll conclude by looking at an explanation of federal and state taxes, estate income taxes, inheritance taxes, and gift taxes. So we've got a lot to cover, but this is a really great chapter. It covers a lot of really great information that you're going to need to know in planning for your future. So let's get started. Let's quickly review our objectives for this evening. Learning objective number 1, analyze your current assets and liabilities for retirement and estimate your retirement living costs. So the difference between your assets and your liabilities is, as you know, your net worth. So we're going to review your assets to ensure that they are sufficient for your retirement plans. Then we're going to estimate living expenses. And some expenses are likely to decrease, while surprisingly, in your retirement years, some of your expenses are actually going to increase. So learning objective number 2, determine your planned retirement income and develop a balanced budget. Your possible sources of income during your retirement years have several different sources, and we're going to look at those. And if your income approximates your expenses, you're in good shape. But if not, you're going to have to determine how you're going to get the additional income that you need and look at some of the sources for that. Learning objective number 3, analyze the personal and legal aspects of estate planning. So the personal aspects of estate planning depend on whether you are single or married. Never having been married does not mean that you don't need to organize your financial affairs. Every adult, whether you're married or single, needs to have a written will. A will is a way to transfer your property according to your wishes after you die so that things don't end up belonging to Uncle Sam. And learning objective number 4, distinguish among various types of wills. So we'll look at the 4 basic types of wills and the different types of trusts. So let's get started by looking at learning objective number 1. Analyze your current assets and liabilities for retirement and estimate your retirement living costs. Your retirement years can certainly be a rewarding phase of your life, but not if you have financial stress. It's going to complicate things. So the more that you can plan for those retirement years, the better position you're going to be in to really enjoy that time of your life. The best thing that you can do is plan ahead and start early. No contribution is too small. So let's walk through just a couple of quick misconceptions about retirement planning. The first one is that you have plenty of time to start saving for retirement. And I know you're probably getting tired of hearing me say start early, even if you need to start small. But that is so important. If you wait, you're going to find that life starts happening, and all of those things that we want to do with our money that we earn is going to start taking over our budget. You're going to get married, you're going to want to buy a house, you're going to need to buy a new car, you're going to have a child, your child's going to have expenses, and all of these things are going to start really consuming your budget. So then you need to set aside money as early as possible for retirement. Make sure that you are continuing to evaluate your investments and try, if you can, to leave that money alone so that you'll have it there for retirement years. And then a misconception, a little bit won't help, and that's not true. Even if you can only put back a little bit, and if you're not able to add to it, you're still in a better off position than if you don't ever make contributions early on. A misconception, you'll spend less money when you retire, and that's not true. You're going to actually have some expenses that are going to be less, but you're going to have some expenses that are going to be more. A misconception is that retirement's only going to last about 15 years. Well, people are living longer and longer, and as that happens, those retirement dollars are having to be stretched out over longer periods of time. A misconception is that you can depend on Social Security and your company pension to pay your basic living expenses. Well, company pensions are quickly becoming a thing of the past. And Social Security, everyone is worried about its future. So in order to be able to have the retirement life that you want to have, you need to figure out how to put aside funds for those, for your expenses during that part of your life. A misconception is that your pension benefits will increase to keep pace with inflation over the years that you're retired, and that's not true either. Chances are that it will not keep pace with inflation, or it may be a set amount that doesn't grow at all. And finally, the last misconception is that your employer's health insurance plan and Medicare will cover all of your medical expenses when you retire. And that absolutely is not going to be true. Medicare does not pay 100%, and there's going to be parts of your medical bills that are your responsibility. So lots of things to plan for, and I know that sometimes it can be overwhelming, but one of my favorite sayings is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So if you just, once again, start small, start early, you can eat that elephant and have a really nice retirement age so that you can enjoy your retirement years. And not to try to overemphasize this point, but this slide is just a really great quick picture of what I'm talking about in planning early. If you put back only $127 a month starting at the age of 25, and you let that grow at 11% APR over 40 years, by the time that you retire, you're going to have almost $1,100,000 available to you for your retirement nest egg. However, if you don't start saving until you're 50 and you're investing as much as a house payment, a really nice house payment, $2,200 a month, and you have that to grow for 15 years until your retirement, even though you're putting back a huge amount more every month, you still are not going to get as much put back as what you would if you had started earlier and made smaller monthly contributions. So you need to let the time value of money work in your favor. So the first step is to conduct a financial analysis. You need to analyze your current assets and liabilities, then estimate spending needs and budget for inflation. House is probably your biggest single asset, and you're going to need to decide whether you're going to want to keep your house or whether you're going to want to sell it and buy something less expensive. If so, the difference between what you make when you sell your house and what you spend on buying a less expensive one, you can invest that difference for your retirement years. You can also do what's called a reverse mortgage. You need to do your homework to make sure that a reverse mortgage is the right choice for you, but in the right situation, a reverse mortgage can help to provide additional income in your retirement years. In looking at your financial analysis, you also need to consider your life insurance. It may be that you are at a point now where people are not depending on you for your income, so you can lower the amount of your premiums by lowering the amount of your life insurance. You might also want to look to see if you have annuities that you could cash out at that point and convert some of your life insurance into cash to estimate your living expenses during your retirement years. This slide goes over some of the things that will most likely go down in monthly costs, such as if you're making contributions to your 401k or other retirement contributions to other types of accounts. Those most likely will either go down or stop completely. You're not going to spend as much money on things that you need for work, like clothes, gas, lunches out. Your housing expenses will most likely go down, especially if you sell a bigger house and purchase a smaller house. And your federal income tax is probably going to go down because you're going to be earning less money. However, there are some expenses that you can think about probably are going to actually go up. The cost of health insurance is probably going to go up. Medical expenses, because you're aging, you're probably going to have more medical expenses. Therefore, a bigger part of your budget is going to go toward those expenditures. You have more leisure time, therefore you're going to spend more money on filling that time. So that's probably going to go up. And you're at a point in your life when you may want to start thinking about contributions to things that are important to you, and that your giving will probably go up. You need to make sure that you consider how inflation is going to increase over the period of the years that you're retired, and make sure that you're budgeting for that as well. Learning objective number 2, determine your planned retirement income and develop a balanced budget based on your income. So major sources of your retirement income are going to be any pension plans that you have, any public pension like Social Security, any personal retirement accounts that you have, and any annuities. Looking at your employer pension plans. So a defined contribution is sometimes called an individual account to which an employer contributes a specific amount annually. There, you simply get whatever money has been set aside by your employer. Generally, what the employer sets aside is a % of your annual earnings, or as we talked about last week, sometimes they match your contributions. So you pay in like 6% and they may pay in 3 or 4%. If you're really lucky, they'll pay in 6% and match your contributions. Sometimes these are stocks that have been purchased, company stocks that were purchased in your name for you, or it might be a part of a profit sharing plan, which depends on how much profits that the company has made during your employment. 401k plan is another type of employer defined contribution. You can set aside a portion of your income into a 401k plan, and then normally those dollars are not considered taxable until you take the money out of your 401k. The money that's in your 401k is invested into stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Normally you get to choose how you would like to have those invested, what % into which kinds of funds. And then there's normally a vesting period, number of years that you have to be with the company before you're fully vested. But even if you leave prior to being fully vested, you usually receive a portion of the funds that have been put back in your name by your employer. An employer defined benefit plan specifies the benefits you'll receive at retirement age, and those are based on your total earnings and the total number of years that you've had on the job. Rather than you having control over how those funds are invested, normally your employer has that control, and your benefit amount stays the same regardless of how the investments perform. 2, public pension plans. We'll look at Social Security, and Social Security is the most widely used source of retirement income, and it covers 97% of all U.S. workers. It is meant to be a part of your retirement income and not your only source. You can check to see how much money has been put back at any time through the Social Security Administration's website. It'll tell you if you qualified for Social Security, and if so, what will be your contribution at different ages. So full retirement, depending on when you were born, is usually between the ages of 65 and 67. I know for me, full retirement is actually almost 68. years of age. It's like 67 and 8 months, I think. So it does depend on your year of birth. You can take benefits as early as age 62, but when you do, those earnings are going to be less than what you would get if you waited until you were fully retired. So though you can start drawing at 62, let's say that you qualify for $1,200 a month. If you would wait to start drawing until you were 65 or 67, you might get like $1,500 or $1,700 a month. And when you go to the Social Security Administration, it will give you all of those calculations. You can put in, what if I do this, if I do that, and it'll tell you what your amounts are going to be. In order to qualify for Social Security, you have to have earned money during a certain number of years. And once again, when you go to Social Security Administration's website, it'll tell you whether or not you've met that qualification, and then based on how much money that you make is how much money that you're going to get back. There also are certain dependent benefits that you may qualify for, and you can look on the website to see if you qualify for those as well. Quick points about Social Security I want to make before moving on. And the first is that even if you do retire, let's say you decide to retire at age 62, but you want to continue working at something that you just enjoy, so you want to work part-time, you can work part-time or full-time even after you qualify for and start drawing Social Security. But if you earn above a certain amount each year, you may have to reduce the amount of benefits that you're getting. So just be aware of that, that even though you retire from your full-time job that may be high stress and higher income, that you can still continue to work even though you're drawing Social Security, but it may impact how much that you can draw. So you need to know what those limits are. And once again, that website's a great place to find all that information. And the other thing I want to mention is that Social Security is adjusted automatically each January for a cost of living increase. So there will be some small cost of living increases in the contribution amount that you receive over the years that you're retired. IRAs, and I know we've talked about IRAs in a couple of our different lessons, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here. There's a really great chart in your book on page 469, and it tells you the different features of the different types of IRAs. Your book also gives you the ins and outs as to how much you can contribute, what the maximums are, and those kinds of things. So I'm not going to take the time today to go over these. I know once again that we've already talked about some of these. Individual retirement accounts and the Keyhole accounts are the two most popular retirement accounts. The Keyhole account is a qualified pension plan that has been developed for people who are self-employed and for self-employed individuals' employees. And note that on all of these personal retirement accounts, you cannot leave money in there indefinitely. You must begin to receive the minimum required payments by at least age 70 and a half at the very latest. And the only exception to that rule is if you have a Roth IRA. I'm thinking that won't be a problem for me. I'm sure I'll have it all spent by then. I do hope that I'm joking, but I can't imagine having money set aside that somebody's telling me I have to take out, that I haven't already done that. But it's a good thing to know. Looked at annuities last week as well, so we'll just hit this really quickly. Just as a reminder, an annuity provides guaranteed income for life. Your annuity can be a fixed annuity or a variable annuity. And there's different types of annuities, an immediate or deferred. And an immediate annuity are generally purchased by people of retirement age, and they want the payments to begin right away. A deferred annuity can be purchased with a lump sum known as a single premium deferred annuity, and payments can begin at some point in the future. They don't need to begin right away. The next step is to estimate what your annual retirement income will be. And then we need to compare your income with your total retirement expenses. Don't forget to increase for inflation. Now to learning objective number 3, which is estate planning. So your estate is literally everything that you own. And in estate planning, what you're doing is trying to decide what are you going to do with everything that you own during your lifetime and then at your death. And though I know sometimes it's difficult to think about your own personal death and what's going to happen at that time, if you don't plan ahead and make decisions about what's going to happen with any estate that you have remaining, Uncle Sam is going to make those decisions for you, and that's motivation to think things through and make plans so that your assets can be distributed the way that you want them, rather than the way that Uncle Sam decides he's going to distribute them. And the way to make sure that that happens is either through a will or one or more trust agreements. So in case of death, proof of claims must be produced or the claims will not be processed. So not only do you need to have a will and have it executed, but you also need to be able to prove who you are or who the person is that is receiving these documents. So you'll need to have birth certificates, marriage and divorce documents in order, any legal name changes, your military service record, Social Security documents, your insurance policies, title and stock and titles to stocks and bond certificates. All of these documents ready, prepared and ready for the person who's going to be your executor, so that they have everything that they need to make sure that your wishes are carried out. Which is going to move us into learning objective number 4, which is types of wills and trusts. Made up your mind as to what you'd like to do with what's left of your estate at the time of your death. Then you need to draw up a will, which is a legal declaration of your mind as to the disposition of your property after your death. If you don't draw up a will, and you die, then you die in what's called intestate, meaning without a valid will, and the state's law of descent and distribution becomes your will. So once again, Uncle Sam's going to distribute it the way he wants to distribute it, so don't let that happen. You can have a will drawn up for as little as $300 to $400. Work with an attorney to make sure that you're doing things legally and that there are no errors, because you don't want anything to be done inappropriately, because of course there won't be a chance to correct that. So $300 to $400 is the going cost for the most part for just a standard will. So there are 4 different types of wills, and we're going to go over those pretty quickly. A simple will is one in which you leave everything to your spouse. Such a will is sufficient for most small estates. A traditional marital share will leaves 1/2 of your adjusted gross estate to your spouse outright, just as their marital share. The other half of your estate could go to your children or to other heirs. The third type is an exemption trust will. Under this type of will, everything passes to your spouse with the exception of an amount equal to the exemption, which goes to a trust. And then the fourth kind is a stated amount will, which allows you to pass to your spouse any amount that satisfies your objectives. And we've already talked about dying without a will, which is known as intestate. But the thing that I wanted to bring up here is not only does that mean that your assets will be distributed according to your state law, but also it could mean that the state could decide on guardians for your children if you have not designated that in your will. And sometimes things become very complicated if there's a blended family. Now, probate is a legal procedure of providing a valid or invalid will. So you want to avoid probate because it's expensive, it's lengthy, and it's public. Wills can be created in several different formats. The first is a holographic will, and this is simply handwritten. You can prepare this yourself by writing out your will. It does not need to be witnessed, but you need to be aware that some states do not recognize a holographic will. The next is a formal will, and is usually prepared by an attorney, and you will sign that in the presence of 2 witnesses. The third kind of format for a will is a statutory will. It's considered to be a form of a type of a formal will. You can get a form either from a lawyer or from a stationery store and just go through and fill out the pre-printed form, and that's considered to be a valid will. In writing your will, you'll need to decide on who's going to be the executor. So the executor is the person who's going to carry out your wishes, and you'll need to name this person. You need to talk to this person beforehand to make sure that they are both willing and able to carry out the task of being your executor. Don't just name somebody and then when your will is read, it's like, oh, surprise, guess what? I named that person. It can be a family member, a friend, an attorney, an accountant, a trust department of a bank. But make sure that you make those arrangements before naming them in your will. Fees for executors, whether they're a professional through a bank or a friend, they're set by state laws as to how much that person can get for being the executor of your will. Before writing your will, you'll also need to decide about who would become the guardian of your children or any pets in your home. And once again, you'll need to talk to these to whoever you have selected to make sure that they're willing and able, and they want to take your children and raise them, or your pets if you choose to leave your pets. And I know when we wrote our will, we actually wrote our first choice, our second choice, and our third choice, and we did that because we didn't want something to happen where the first person was unable to take them for some reason, and then we didn't have a second choice in place. So we actually chose 3 different people and named them as guardians over our children, as to the first person if they declined, the second person if they declined, the third person. And we did talk to all of them beforehand so that they were aware of that, so that we could guarantee our own peace of mind that our children were going to end up, in the case of our untimely deaths, with someone that we wanted to raise them. While you are preparing your financial will, you may also want to consider preparing a living will. Now, a living will allows you to specify whether or not you want to be kept alive on artificial life support. When you create a living will, you're actually going to put in writing what your wishes are. In your living will, you can also appoint someone to make healthcare decisions for you, should you not be able to do so yourself. And one of the things about a living will, and once again I realize that sometimes these are really difficult things to think about, but if you are in a situation, your family is in a situation where, let's just say, we're going to talk not about you personally, but a situation where there's a situation where someone perhaps has had an accident, a vehicle or motorcycle accident, and they're injured critically, they're seriously injured, and the decision has to be made on whether or not you want to put the person on life support. Well, if you've taken the time ahead of time to make sure that your wishes are known by putting it in writing and making sure that somebody in your family knows where your living will is and what it says, then if you've appointed someone to make healthcare decisions for you, they're not having to guess what you want. They know what you want, and then that makes it so much easier for that person that's having to make that choice for you, and really just takes a huge burden off of that person. So I know for myself and my husband, we do not want to be put on artificial life support unless it's just in the moment of an emergency where we should be able to get to the other side and be able to sustain life on our own after we've had a chance to heal. But if that's not the case, we do not want to be put on life support. We've designated our wishes in writing, and we've designated a person in our family so that they know that those are our wishes, so that if that's ever the situation, they're not in a position where they're going to actually have to make that decision not knowing what we would want, but just trying to guess based on what they know of us. So I know, once again, really hard thing to think about, really hard thing to write up, but would so bless your family by letting them know what it is that you really would like to have happen. And similarly, you may also want to consider designating someone with the power of attorney. This is a legal document authorizing someone to act on your behalf, or a healthcare power of attorney combines the living will and the power of attorney to make medical decisions for you. Finally, you may also want to consider leaving a last letter of instruction. Now, this is not a legally enforceable document, but it can provide your heirs with important information. You would want to put things in it such as details of any funeral arrangements that you've made or that you want to have made for you, the names of persons who are to be notified of your death, the locations of your bank account, safe deposit box, and other important items, as well as any last-minute notations on how you might want to have some of your personal items disposed of, or people that you would like to have them have those. So once again, this is not legally binding, and if it is in conflict with your will, because it is legally binding, would be the one that they would go by. So let's talk for a quick minute about trusts. A trust is a legal arrangement through which your assets are held by a trustee for your benefit or for the benefit of your beneficiaries. You can set up a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. And a revocable trust, you retain the right to end the trust or change its terms during your lifetime. Where if you set up an irrevocable trust, whatever you say, that's it. It can never be changed. So you need to consider what would best serve your interests. Just a couple of the most common types of trust, and the first is a credit shelter trust, and this enables the spouse of a deceased person to avoid paying your federal taxes on a certain amount of assets left to him or her as part of the estate. A disclaimer trust is appropriate for a couple who does not yet have enough assets to need a credit shelter trust, but may need one in the future. And this type of trust can protect the wealth from estate taxes. There's also a living trust. Living trust is a property management arrangement that you establish while you are still alive. And a testamentary trust is established by your will and becomes effective upon your death. We'll end this lecture looking at taxes and estate planning. So the four major types of this kind of estate taxes are estate income tax, inheritance tax, gift tax, and just regular estate taxes. So an estate tax is a federal tax levied on the right of a deceased person to transmit his or her property and life insurance at death. The tax is based on the fair market value of everything in your estate, and as of 2012, the exemption was $5.12 million. Trust federal income taxes. In addition to federal estate taxes, estates and certain trusts must file federal income tax returns with the IRS. Taxable income for estates and for trusts is computed in the same manner as taxable income for individuals. And then there's inheritance taxes. Yes, the people that you leave your property to may have to pay taxes on what they've inherited. Only state governments impose inheritance taxes, but most states do have them. And on the average, they're between 4 and 10%. Now, gift taxes means that you do not have to pay taxes on anything that one individual receives, and it's as long as the amount is less than $14,000, and it's to one person in a single year. So sometimes people reduce their tax liability on their estate by giving away portions of their estate as gifts. And you're free to make such gifts to your spouse, your children, or anyone else at any one time. Just make sure that your planning includes what you need in order to continue to live in your retirement years. As always, the full PowerPoint deck is posted for you, as well as some supplemental videos that I hope you'll take a minute to review. If you need me, you have my contact information. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this class with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.